Hi, guys. Welcome to another Get to Know a Nurse podcast with Pinnacle Healthcare Staffing. I'm Kaylin. Today I'm here with Catie Harris. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Can you tell us your story?
Oh my goodness. So yeah, I'm Catie, and I've been a nurse for I'm going on 30 years, which is crazy. I've been a nurse practitioner for over 20 years, and about 8 years ago, I started a company called NursePreneurs, which helps nurses to start businesses. And just this past year, I launched my own clinic. So it's a wellness and regenerative center right here in Philadelphia. So
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love that. So, why did you become a nurse?
Well, that one, yeah, that question is a little. So I became a nurse because when I was 16, I had all these ideas of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a judge and an astronaut and this and that, and every day was something new. And then one day I just had a dream and I woke up and I went down and I said to my parents, I want to be a nurse. And they're like, okay, whatever. And I'm like, no, I want to be a nurse. I was very resolute. It's the only thing in my life that I've ever been like, this is what I'm going to do. And damn it, I'm going to do it. And that's what I did. I went straight through nursing school, never questioned it. Even the highs and lows with nursing school, because there's a lot of them, but I loved it and have stuck with it ever since. It was the best decision I ever made.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome that you could just like find something that you loved at such a young age. I
Yeah,
feel like that's really hard for some people.
it is. And you don't love every aspect of nursing. I mean, there's parts of it that you're just like, oh my God, this is such a grind, but the overall profession is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So you have a company called NursePreneurs. Can you explain like what your company does for the viewers? I know you went over it briefly, but just a little bit more.
Yeah, so one of the reasons I started NursePreneurs was because I'd been in the hospital, and as a nurse practitioner, as a nurse, I'd hit a ceiling. So I'm like, oh, I'll just go to nurse practitioner school. So that's what I did. But after like 5 years of that, you hit a ceiling again, and it's just kind of like, oh my God, like, here I was with a PhD, I've got 4 master's degrees, and I'm still reporting to the intern. And the intern, I remember the one day the intern, reporting out to him, and he's like, oh, we don't do that here. And I'm like, look, jerk, that manual over there, I wrote the manual of what we do here. Like, I know what we do here.
Yeah.
And it was just so frustrating. And I could feel myself getting like angry and irritable. I'd walk into the hospital and just be annoyed. And
Yeah.
what I didn't recognize at the time that I do now is that I had hit that ceiling where I couldn't do anymore. They didn't want me to do anymore, but I was completely stifled. And the only way to stay in that position was to just kind of like internally die. Like I just had to just do what they wanted me to do. And that's not my personality. So, I could feel that internal struggle, but I didn't know what else I could do. So I started looking at what other nurses were doing. So I thought, oh, I'll start a business. And, at the time, I'm like, I must be the only nurse who's ever thought of this before, right? So I went out looking for those types of nurses and found them. So I started my own podcast called the NursePreneurs Podcast. And we've interviewed like almost 300 nurses on what they're doing and the businesses that they are running. And from that, we just developed courses with those nurses to teach other nurses how to do what it is that they were doing. So,
It's so
yeah,
impressive.
yeah, it was really
It
fun.
is a really creative idea though. I've never heard of that before. So,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. So what inspired you to transition to healthcare entrepreneurship? Like,
Yeah, I guess that that what I just told you, it was really just that frustration of being in the hospital system, and I
yeah.
needed to. The two things that I really need in my life are to constantly do something new, and you really can't do that when you're working in a service. And I did try other service lines, like I was like, oh, I'll try ortho, and I went to ortho, and it took me like 3 months to figure out ortho, and then I'm like, all right, I'm bored again. And so it was just I needed something else. So when I did the jump into entrepreneurship, it was like, oh, I've got to learn the business end of it. I've got to learn the service line of it. I've got to learn the marketing aspect of it. And there's literally no end to it. Even now I'm still trying to I'm like, I got to figure this out. I got to figure that out. I got to, figure out how to, especially with the clinic, and how do I get these patients to come in on a consistent basis? How do I cover my overhead? So there's like this infinite line of things that I can learn. And so it's like
Yeah.
an entrepreneur paradise.
Yeah. So you've been working in nurse mentoring for over a decade. What is the biggest takeaways that you've learned over the last 10 years?
Yeah, some of the biggest takeaways are, I would say there are a lot of nurses that come to us that say they're interested in entrepreneurship, but what they really want is more money or to get out of debt.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try and make that distinction at first. or do you just want more money so you can go on vacation, so you can do all these things? Because I'll have nurses come in and say, I have a lot of debt. How do I get rid of it real fast? And I'm like, this is not the route. Especially if you're going to start a clinic, you need like 100,000 somewhere that you can, dip into if you're going to start up a clinic, because it gets very expensive very quickly. So that's one distinction. The next distinction is helping them to find a problem that they need to solve, that patients want them to solve, and it has to be a bleeding neck type problem. And when I say that, I mean, there's lots of problems out there, but people aren't going to pay for a lot of things. They're going to pay for things that they absolutely like, they're desperately seeking a solution for. And that's what you have to tap into. So you really have to talk to your audience. And a lot of the nurses have some mindset issues around that, because if they try and sell something and nobody buys, they're like, oh, they don't like me, they don't like what I'm offering, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And it's like, it has nothing to do with you. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. It has to do with whether or not you hit the nail on the head with what your audience actually wants.
Do you find this more suiting for you than just working as a nurse like regularly? Like, do you find that this is just like what you want to do from now on? Like, would you ever go back to
I
nursing?
can't. I left the hospital in 2020. It was August of 2020, and I walked in and I was like, I was working in the OR at the time with my surgeons, and I'm like, this is my last shift. I'm moving to Mexico, and everybody laughed, and I'm like, no, I'm serious. And my son and I, that's exactly what we did. We moved to Mexico. We lived there for about a year.
Seriously?
During COVID, and sat on the beach, watched the the waves come in, the moon rise, the sunrise, all that kind of good stuff. And I was able to do NursePreneurs from there. And when I came back in 2021, I just, to this day, I still have not been able to bring myself to go back to take that job back, which I'm sure is long gone at this point. But
oh my goodness.
the turnover, though, there might be a job opening, but I can't.
Yeah. So how did COVID impact you and NursePreneurs?
It was a big, because COVID hit the nurses so hard, and I think it was like the straw that broke the camel's back in a lot of ways. Because 10 years prior to that, I saw that there was no path, there's nowhere to go, right? And I think when COVID hit, the nurses really understood that. Not only were they going nowhere, but we were basically put in the front lines to do the things that nobody else would do, right? And there was all this outpouring of like appreciation and stuff, and more pizza parties, but it's like things didn't ever get better for us, and if anything, we're worse off than we were before COVID. Plus we have that knowledge that things aren't ever going to change. No matter what happens, this is the role, and you take it or leave it. And a lot of the nurses wanted to leave it. And so they came in droves to NursePreneurs, because we were one of the only companies at the time doing stuff like this. And they're like, how do I get out of the hospital? How do I start IV hydration, med spa, all these different things that they could potentially do. So it was a big boost for us when COVID hit.
So it didn't negatively impact
It didn't. And actually the nurses that started IV hydration during COVID made a killing, because everybody was looking for it. They were like, and they did COVID tests. We had one nurse who was doing COVID tests. There was a film production company in her town. She started doing COVID tests for them with her IV hydration business. She made like $300,000 that year just doing COVID tests on a stage.
Goodness.
I was like, that's crazy.
It's like so many. I feel like you always hear so many stories about like COVID negatively impacting businesses, but it did the opposite for you. So.
Yeah, I think the businesses that were able to pivot, and especially like during COVID in Philadelphia, they started delivering wine. I was like, this is the most exciting thing ever. So that place did fine, but
Yeah. What do you think the future of nursing will look like?
I definitely think it's going to be different. For years we've been talking about moving nursing into the community, and the acute care settings getting smaller and smaller, and there's more outpatient type surgeries. One of the programs that we do is concierge nursing, which really helps nurses to take the patients home and care for them at home on a one-to-one basis, which is ideal. So I definitely see more of that, and there's definitely a huge need for freelance nurses, concierge nurses, whatever you want to call them, to take patients home from day surgery and just take care of them for 24 hours. Long-term care in the home is absolutely needed. Special needs nurses are desperately needed. So there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah. What advice would you give to nurses looking to enter an entrepreneurial venture?
Definitely make sure it's something that you want to do, because it is a journey and it's a journey that never ends. So you'll never ever get everything done. And, a lot of nurses, we like to, our shift begins and it ends and we like to keep everything right there. But with entrepreneurship, I used to say like I was doing this so I could have more time, but I have way less time, but I have a passion for what I'm doing and it makes me happy and excited to do it. So if you have a passion, you can do it. The business opportunity is there, but you have to be persistent and you have to have the courage to do it and see it through.
Right. So you also own Philly Wellness Center, as we talked earlier. So how did that project happen?
Yeah, so I tend to be a little impulsive. So last year we were interviewing nurses, and they were helping nurses to set up franchises. And I was like, oh, I really like this business model. And it was like nagging at me. And I'm like, I really want to do something like this. I think it would be really exciting. And while I didn't end up doing the franchise, I got into hormone therapy and weight loss, and that just kind of, this has taken me down a crazy rabbit hole of like stem cells and regenerative medicine and that kind of stuff. So that's what our focus is on now, is hormones, weight loss. Now we're doing gut health, regenerative therapies, just stuff that you don't normally see when you go to your regular provider.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. How did you come up with that?
Well, it started with the weight loss because my sister and all her friends wanted it, and I was looking into semaglutide, and I'm like, I don't, what is this, a fad drug? Like, what's going on? It's going to be off the market in a year. But the more you dive into semaglutide, which is GLP-1, which is a hormone, the more you realize how incredibly powerful this hormone is and how effective it is in helping people. And then you realize that weight gain is actually a hormonal issue, and it all kind of comes together. So it has nothing to do with eat less, move more, because we do eat less and move more, and people are getting fatter. So that's not the problem. The problem is a hormonal problem.
I cannot believe that I didn't know that. It makes a lot more sense because so many people are so active and they do not see any progress.
Yeah, and as soon as you hit 50, it's like the weight just boop, it comes out of nowhere. It's like you wake up and you're 3 sizes bigger than you were yesterday, and it really has nothing to do with, like my diet didn't change. I exercise like crazy. I'm like, well, exercising like crazy is part of the problem too, because you have a cortisol release, and cortisol releases glucose, which releases insulin, which basically makes you fat.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Don't overwork yourself.
Yeah, do not overwork yourself.
So how do you maintain a balance between the demands of running a business and your personal life?
I don't know. It's kind of intertwined. I don't think there is a balance. It's all, I'm a single mom. My son is 12, and he was working in the clinic with me this summer, or pretending to anyway. He was head of janitorial services. But yeah, it was more work trying to keep him occupied than he actually did. But yeah, so I can do a lot of stuff online. So I can do my consults online. I can run NursePreneurs has always been online. So that's how we were able to go to Mexico and run that. So yeah, I mean, my son's part of the business, so he's part of both businesses. Actually, he does some social media stuff for me, and
really,
he's really good at audio engineering. So
oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
He's so proud of you. I know he is.
Yeah, he is.
That's insane that you moved to Mexico, though. Do you miss it?
Oh my God, it was the best year. I mean, I hate to say that because it was such a sad year for many, many people, but it was a really nice year because we got this great apartment. It was oceanfront, and I could just watch the waves come in. I maybe went in the water 5 times the whole year I was there, but I just loved sitting there and doing my work and watching the waves coming and all the kite surfers, and it was just very relaxing.
Yeah, way more relaxing than Philly,
yeah.
I would say. So as a nurse, you give a lot of care and attention to your patients. So who is the person or people in your life that give you lots of love?
Oh, that's my son. Yeah, he's still at that age where he thinks I'm amazing, and he tells me he loves me all the time. So
well,
that
you
makes
are
me
amazing. You deserve that recognition.
Well, coming from him, that means everything,
Yeah. What is working really well in your life right now?
Just I think it's the relationships that you make, and my son and I were talking about this morning. I'm like, you live your life, and you interact with people, and you build up a community around you that you love, they love you back, and that's really, to me, that's like the purpose of having a good life. It's to help others and to let them help you. So yeah, that's been a huge part of everything that I've done.
That's why you're an amazing business owner. That's how you keep things rolling.
Yeah.
So, what are you most self-confident about?
Most self-confident that I mean, yeah, I'm really, really good at coming up with ideas. It's both my pro and con because I can solve, I love problems. I'm a problem solver. Even in the hospital, I would like search out problems and
Okay.
solve them. That was my thing, and the residents loved it because some people will just turf the problems to somebody else, but I will actively seek them out. But it's also a con because I'm an ideas person and a solver. It's like I get myself in things I shouldn't be involved in, right? So
Yeah.
it's but that's definitely one of my strongest suits.
Yeah, you're super creative for sure. I mean, even coming up with the businesses that you came up with, like, I've never heard of them. I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard of it. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a creative thought. You have
Yeah, no, I'm in
that
that arena where it feels like everybody's doing what I'm doing, but it's like we're such a small part of the population that's actually
yeah,
doing it. But yeah, most people don't know what we're doing.
yeah. What has become clear to you as you've gotten older?
I would say really kind of my purpose has become more clear. Things don't get to me the way they used to. It's kind of like I don't try to convince people of things that they don't want to be convinced of. It's just kind of like, okay, well, here's what I think. If you think differently, that's fine. It doesn't, that's great. We'll go on divergent paths. But it's also clear to me that there is no absolute. And, I've always said I don't believe in absolute. So I don't think there is an answer or a good enough answer to a lot of the medical problems that we have. So it's just kind of like one of those things that it's become clear to me that I was just having an argument this morning, on social media about HRT and who we prescribe it for, and I'm just kind of like, well, she's like, well, are you saying MD Anderson is wrong? And I'm like, well, no, but they're also not right. There's
Yeah,
other avenues of things because the way we treat hormones and cancer is it's not definitive by a long shot, and there's a lot of different avenues, and I think we need to explore them even if they're taboo or fringe or I
yeah,
just think there's a lot of room for improvement.
yeah, definitely. What is something you wish people understood about you?
I guess I'm actually a very shy introverted person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like I went to a conference this past weekend and I had a couple people come up to me and they're like, oh, you're from NursePreneurs, and it like I don't know, it makes me like, oh yeah, I still feel little in a lot of ways. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Seriously?
yeah.
Why is
I
that?
don't
Like,
know. I don't know. I get very like an anxious, nervous person, and so like it's something that I have to like account for and control. But yeah, so when I was younger, people would say I was aloof or bitchy. I had that bitch look. But it was like, no, I'm just terrified.
oh my gosh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, no. Oh my, I would never expect that.
Yeah.
If you could talk to all the employees in the nursing industry, what would you advise them to do better to support their nurses?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of room to appreciate each generation that comes up. So the nurses that came before me, they worked for a lot less pay. They had, they had to deal with, worse behavior of the medical system in general. And so they looked at my generation of like, oh, they had it easy. And now, I kind of feel like our generation's doing the same thing to like,
Yeah,
not just the millennials, but Gen Z that's coming up. And it's just kind of like, oh, well, we can't sexually harass them anymore. They have it so easy, and it's like,
yeah,
okay, well, that wasn't appropriate in the first place, right?
yeah,
So, I think treating them with respect and the fact that they are having a different experience. We all had a different experience going through. And the goal is to make the profession better, right? And the fact that it's better for one generation should make us happy and not, kind of like you don't fall back into the oh they have it easy or bully them or that kind of stuff.
yeah.
It's really about protecting our own and making sure that the profession is something that people continue to want to go into because it is a great profession.
Yeah, nurses definitely need to be protected. I
Yeah.
always hear like horrifying
Hmm.
stories. Do you have any? Like,
um Off the top of my head, no, because I'd be afraid to
yeah.
like share some of them, but yeah,
Oh
there's
my
some really bad
gosh.
ones that are out there. Yeah.
So what makes a great life?
A great life is having people that you can share it with, I mean,
Yeah.
there's no point. We always talk about this because I'd say in my clinic, our goal is to live to 120, 150, but there's no point in living to 120 to 150 if you're sick, unhealthy, bedbound, demented, and no friends, right?
Yeah.
So it's not about living longer. It's about having people in your life that are worth living for.
Oh, I love that. That's a great response. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
for coming on here today. And it was great to get to know you and about your businesses.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
great. Thank you so
thank
much.
you. See ya.
Bye.